Jack Abramoff was at the epicenter of US and Republican politics for some years, then fell from grace. He's now back on the scene. And who does he think will be the Republican candidate? And can that person win? He joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, especially with the latest employment figures, which are much more generous than people assumed, I think it's going to be hard for any Republican to win. But it depends who the Republican is. Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, I think pretty clearly it's going to be Romney. He's got the money and the organization out there to compete in the primaries that the others just don't. And I think that we saw in Nevada that conservatives are willing to support him. So I think Romney's probably going to take it.
The next few days will tell us a great deal, I suppose. But by the end of this week, it will be fairly decided, won't it?
Well, I think there's no incentive for the other candidates to get out, frankly. They have the debates that will be starting up again next month. They have enough money to compete. Ron Paul certainly has enough, and the activists. Newt Gingrich seems to be sufficiently stubborn not to get out. And I think Rick Santorum is just waiting around to see if anything does happen and to be there if it does.
Mm-hmm. But you better than most understand how money can influence and how power really works. We heard that Romney was out buying ads 5-1, outspending Gingrich 5-1. Surely that dents the democratic process if you can buy your way to success.
Well, I think, unfortunately, in every American election, we see the same thing. Last time, Obama had almost $1 billion to play in the election, and this time we expect he'll have the same amount. Elections are an expensive business because you have to buy television, you have to be able to turn out your activists. So you spend a lot of money, and clearly those candidates with more money have an advantage, and that'll be Romney for the Republicans and obviously Obama.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, you understand how, particularly Republican, but American politics works. You know the reality, the meaty, the flesh and blood, tooth and claw reality here. Is Romney? I know you want changes, you want reform. Do you think Romney is the man who can achieve that? Surely he's very much part of the system.
Well, he's part of the system in one way. He's been obviously a governor and has run for office. In another way, he's not part of Washington. He never really had any footprint here. And that's very important because this is the town that ultimately can corrupt you more than anything. And I think in terms of the Republicans, perhaps other than Ron Paul, but the realistic prospect of Ron Paul getting a nomination or being elected is minimal. But I think Romney certainly more than the others might be able to affect some change here.
Really, that's interesting. You know, Barack Obama was meant to be the man who would change so much. In your experience, has he really changed anything fundamentally?
Well, I think he's tried to. I think the problem is the town is so powerful itself. People come here, whether it's as president or as congressman, hoping to change everything, and they run into some brick walls. I think what's different now, though, is there's an era of change in America. There's a lot of anger out there, and I think we saw with the Stock Act that was passed in the U.S. Senate just on Friday, that basically it was 90 days from the time it went on television on 60 Minutes until it was passed. And that's a very significant step, and I think we'll see that applied to other things too.
Mm-hmm. All politicians, whether it's London, Ottawa, Washington, they often come in right and left with ideas of great change, that they are overwhelmed with the amount of work, the paperwork, the bureaucracy. That itself surely makes any political system consensus.
Yes, it's stifling, and America has, in its federal government, grown completely out of control. But I think that there is a movement afoot again. There are some who are still here, some of the Tea Party members who were elected in 2010 who are still dedicated to change and haven't sort of bought into the system. The degree to which the new people don't buy into the system will show us whether or not there will be some real change.
Mm-hmm. Your opinion of the Tea Party, because you're not a natural Tea Party partisan or advocate, but you do understand conservatism. Are they here to stay?
Oh, the two parties here to stay? I think so. I think the barrier for entry for a third party in America is so high, not just financially and not just in terms of the access to the media, but culturally. People in America are culturally used to two parties. It's going to be very difficult for a third party to ever gain any traction.
Right. Actually, it was my accent that misled you. I actually said Tea Party. I mean, that was a good answer for two parties, the Tea Party. Oh. No, it's okay.
Sorry.
No, it was good. It was...
Yeah, no.
But I mean, you know, they had so much.
Parties.
That's right. They had so much publicity. I mean, they were everywhere in media, often being attacked. And I think it's quite indicative that the attacks have stopped now, pretty much. Does that mean the Tea Party has really had its day?
No, I think it's interesting. The Tea Party is a phenomenon that's phenomenal because they've morphed into a political operation. And where we see the activism of the Tea Party now is not necessarily in these public displays. We see that more with the Occupy movement, frankly. But we see it with the effectiveness to which they become political, and they've organized districts. And I think we're going to see some very surprising things in this election from the Tea Party activists.
Really? But we've had two relatively good reports on employment and, to a degree, economic figures. If there's a third one, Barack Obama's going to win this election, whoever he's fighting against.
Well, it's hard to know what the economy is going to do. And so far, Obama has not brought unemployment to where it was when he back up to the level that he was when he got into office. We'll have to see what happens. But obviously, these are good signs for him. Whether a Republican can overcome him or not, it's hard to tell. His popularity has just peaked for the first time over 50% in a long time. It's hard to know where things are going to go. If it dips again, he might be in trouble. And if it stays here, he may be okay.
Just one last question. If it is Romney, and I think pretty much everyone agrees now it will be Romney for the Republicans, any ideas who he's likely to choose as his running mate?
Well, I think most people in the Republican Party are basically telling him that he has to choose Rubio. Rubio brings Florida, which is critical in a close election, having the ability to win Florida. And number two, it gives him the capacity to win Latino votes in America, which is vital. And right now, I think Romney, with some of his stands, is going to have a tough time with that group.
Right. And where does Rubio stand in terms of his place in the conservative movement?
Well, I think Rubio would help him there, but Romney, Ann Coulter has been perhaps his most vocal supporter. Romney is not exactly vilified completely in the conservative movement. I think one of the reasons is that the other two candidates are also have some questionable positions in terms of conservative. But the Nevada election showed that the majority of conservatives went with Romney. I think that's what we're going to start to see. They want to win the election. I think he's their only winnable candidate.
That's a very good point, actually. Ann Coulter, I mean, David Frum, less, I suppose, at the heart of conservatism now, but highly regarded, and other conservative commentators have backed this man. It doesn't always get through to the massive opinion. Fascinating, as always. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.